Okay, so there's a bit of air and stuff in that one. This lift pump, I don't know, I might need to take that off again and have a look. I can't seem to get it to pump really, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything trying to bleed out the system. I also had left one of these things in there stupidly, because I had warned myself several times to take them out, but I left one in there, so I had to dig all that off. That's only temporary, but I wasn't getting any pumped seawater, so we'll give it a go again. Okay, so I had to bleed the injectors there, and they've actually started on the 3 that were still tight, so yeah, pretty much ready to give it another go. Yeah, it does. Right, that all went well anyway. Oil pressure looks good, and we've run it for a while now, get it a bit up to temperature. Temperature gauge isn't working. That's the the temperature sensor that was in the engine, so clearly that doesn't match up with the gauge I've got. Oil pressure gauge is working fine. It is making, it is charging. It's got 28 point something volts. Again, I still have a 12 volt gauge on here that only reads 12 volts, and that is not accurate either, so I'll be working on those later anyway, but yeah, so far so good with this one, so I'll give it one more little run there. Right, so if you're familiar with these at all, you'll realise that this is the V rotary pump on these ones. These were in the early Dodge Rams, and a lot of the stuff here seems to have the V pumps. The P pump is used on the higher horsepower ones. If you get into the 210 horsepower lorries or into the later Dodge Rams and stuff, you get into the inline pumps, which can make a lot more horsepower. But these are plenty sufficient for what I need. Now, they look quite a bit different to the marine pump as well, in that they've got the excess fuel device. I'm guessing that boats don't really need these because of acceleration. This is about acceleration, smoke, and fueling. So when you put your foot down, it gives the fuel, varies the fuel and air supply until the turbo brings up boost. But in a boat, you push the throttle there, you set it there, you leave it there. Now, one thing I'm worried about is automotive droop, in that, say you come onto a hill in your car, or in your Jeep or truck or whatever, it's going to automatically slow down. So therefore, to increase power, you have to put your foot down to get it to go up the hill. Say you're on a generator or on the boat pumps. As load increases, say you come into a trough of a wave and the engine needs more power, the industrial style pumps, which you'd have on diggers and jennies and all that kind of stuff, will automatically increase power by itself without driver input. So you set the throttle to where you want it, and it'll maintain power that it requires. Where in a automotive pump, that's not going to happen. It can probably do it to a certain amount, but it's usually set by the operator. And in a boat, you don't want to be using it all the time. So they have something called automotive droop, which so as it's a bit of a tolerance. So as load comes on, the engine's governor will allow it to bring RPMs up, and then what it'll do is it'll overcompensate, and you end up with a surging engine to the point where it can over rev and detonate, or end of story, either way. From what I can gather, the V pump is pretty stable. the VP14, Boss VP14, which these are. Whether you can adjust the automotive droop in them or not, that's out of my field of experience completely. But I've seen these used on numerous marine applications without any problem. I'm also not going to be running this thing at full RPMs. And these engines are capable of more RPMs than, like, these were originally set to 2.5. I mean, you know, people put 3200 RPM springs in them and stuff. And I know there's other issues with balancers and stuff, but I don't think I'll have any problem. I won't know that until it goes in the boat and I get to try it out in some bad weather and stuff like that as well. But I don't think I'll have a problem. They are supposed to be, unless you open them up very much, then they can become unstable, because the principles of those are, you have this pump body is kept at a pressure by the lift pump of something like, it's not much, it's a fairly low pressure, but that case pressure is how the fuel pump operates. It requires this pressure to supply pressure into the valves inside, so they can then compress diesel and pump it up to the injectors. It's that crank case, or that case pressure, when you take the pump, when the pump's wound up too far, like when you've pushed the limits of the injectors that are in it, and then you go for a bigger injector, the pump case pressure needs to be raised to provide enough fuel to that. If you get low case pressure, then you'll end up with problems. That's kind of the limits of these pumps then. I mean, people talk about changing out seals and stuff. You're also, because as that fuel screw goes in, you're prolonging the ejector cycle on the back end of it opening. So then people start putting on the KSB permanently to advance timing slightly, or advancing the timing on the pump to try and compensate for the length of the cycle of the injector. I don't want to go that far with any of this. I don't want to get into that. Now, as for turning up the pump on them, first of all, because this isn't so necessary, you know, you always hear people turn them up to pump tons of black smoke out of their trucks or whatever. But again, we don't just jam the throttle open going out the harbour. It's not what you do. So that's not so necessary. So the pump specialist I deal with has told me just to wind the star nut all the way to the bottom inside there and set the fuel pin to the steepest angle. And that should give me, I don't know how that relates to horsepower throughout the power curve. I'm hoping that it raises horsepower throughout the power curve, but I haven't actually figured that out. I mean, you always see 40 horsepower plus fuel pin and stuff like that, but I don't think that has any effect on top end horsepower. So what I'm hoping is that it raises the power curve low down. Don't take my word on that now. Then for the overall horsepower, there's the fuel screw in the back. What that does is it prolongs the injector time out. Now, take that pin too far in, you're going to have a runaway engine, because it ends up in a continuous cycle. It can't close injector in fuel to the injector. But it also increases the exhaust gas temperatures a lot as that goes in. You also, again, you'll end up with black smoke eventually if you go too far. I asked the pump guy about setting these up, you know, drop them in, program them there for me, blah blah. He said, put it in the boat, turn it up until you get black smoke, turn it back down a little bit. So I'll take his word for it for now. If this pump ends up being a issue later on, I'm not opposed to having to change it out for a marine unit or whatever. I don't want to do it now. I'll see how it goes. From what I hear, these are a great pump. You know, nice crisp start. It's got the KSB or the cold start device on there, and they are supposed to be a very nice pump and quite suitable for this. So we'll see, hopefully. But
yeah, so just I'm going to turn up the star wheel straight away, and I might give it a quarter turn of fuel screw to begin with. We'll see how that all goes, and I'll be fettling that once it's in the boat anyway. Again, I'm keeping the same props as I had before for now. It's the same gearboxes, so I don't expect any speed increase at my 2000 RPM or whatever I choose to cruise it at. The only thing I might be happier to run these engines a bit faster than the previous ones, just because they were so old. But yeah, that's what I know about it. I'm open to correction on it. It's kind of a complicated subject. They're a complicated device in themselves, not quite as much as the inline pumps, but they're not something you really want to be messing with without knowing a bit about them. I'll do that basic stuff. That is it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's the outside temperature that it is now. Engines are cold, so what I'm going to do is do a cold start, and I want to do a little messing with the injector pump settings, but I want to make sure that I'm not making the engine smoky, so I'm going to try another start first and see how clean it is. Okay, so I've opened up the top of the excess fuel device, and that's your star wheel. So I'm just going to mark that now and wind it down a bit. That gives preload to the spring, and then here we have the fuel pin. So I'm going to turn that. You can see where it's been running on the thing, but I'm going to turn it to the steepest angle, and we'll see how that goes, and then we'll do another start. I'm not going to go mad with the star wheel just yet, and I've taken off the collar, the locking collar off the fuel screw down there. So we'll try a few turns down on the star wheel, but again, I don't want to make these smoky. We'll see how it goes. Okay, this is just with the fuel pin adjusted. Okay, so that seems pretty much the same, so
adjust the fuel screw now. So that's a little over a quarter of a turn on the fuel screw. I'll just see what that does. I have a piece of timber ready in case you run away or anything, but I don't think you're risking it much at that little bit of a step. Expect the tick over to be higher as well. Again, it seems to have woken it up a bit alright, but I didn't hear the tick over come up or anything, so I'm going to go the full half turn and we'll try it at that. I'll probably leave it at that then. Okay, so this is half a turn. Adjusted the idle down a little bit there. Still seems pretty clean. A little bit more smoke when it puffs and it starts up, but I'm okay with that. So I'll leave it at that. That's about 3 winds down on the star wheel, pin turn to the steepest angle, and fuel screw in half a turn. Well, that's that now. I'm going to get them covered up and stored away for the next month or so while I try and get the boat engine compartments painted, cleaned up. I want to pull the drive shafts and do shaft bearings, etc. So we should be up and running again late March, and I'll get another video up of how they're performing in the boat. Yeah, that's about that. So thanks for watching, and if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, and we'll see what projects pop up in the meantime. Yeah, I got a car here I'm working on at the moment, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So okay, thank you. Cheers.